Hello everybody, and welcome to part 7 of our multi-part series that we like to call all about our expediting trucking business. I had to think there.
How does that go again?
Yeah, and this one we're going to talk a little bit about, and in depth a little bit about whether, you know,
The choice we made.
the choice we made, and whether it's better to be a driver for a fleet owner and in a fleet owner's truck, or to buy your own truck and be an owner-operator. And we're going to look at some of our numbers and some of our reasons to give you a little background.
Yeah, and this isn't, where you're going to find all the answers in this one video.
No.
This is just our experience, and at that time where we made the decision we made, at becoming owners versus drivers, and we have done both.
Right.
So,
Yeah, to give you a little background story, we started in 2011, and we started driving for a large fleet owner, Expediter Services. We were happy with driving for them, but we drove on what was called a 40-60 plan, where we basically got 40% of the revenue from the run and from the deadhead pay, and they got everything else. And then we drove for them for 13 months. And then we switched over to a different fleet owner, and we drove for them for 2 years. And again, we were on the 40-60 plan, where we essentially got 40% of the run pay, and 40% of the accessorials, and 40% of the deadhead to pickup or deadhead from a previous layover. It's the way FedEx used to call different ways they paid. We would actually get 40% of that. So that is our experience. There are other pay plans. Some owners will pay 60-40, where the driver pays for the fuel, but they get either 100% of the fuel surcharge, or they just split everything 60-40, and whoever gets the 60 pays for fuel. Not for maintenance,
no,
but just for the fuel and the death, and they do it different ways with tolls also. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We are familiar with the 40-60, at least the way our owner paid us when we drove for them. And so we don't really have concrete experience with the 60-40 plans, but we do know people that, we'll take a stab at it. How's that?
We'll take a stab at it, and those 60-40 people can correct us.
So, like Judy was saying, why did we decide to buy a truck, which sometimes we question that decision. But,
well, for one, the timing was good, because
yes.
It just kind of was one of those opportunities that came to us. We weren't really out there looking for that opportunity.
No.
Actually, when we first went into this, we had no intentions of really owning our own truck.
No.
But it just happened to fall into our lap. So
Right.
it was good timing.
And we were very happy with the fleet owners we were driving for. In fact, I'll tell you who they were. You'll probably get a kick out of this. But it was Les and Stacy Willis, Godspeed Expediters, and we drove for them for a little over 2 years. And we were very happy with them. And that's nothing to do with why we left.
Mm-hmm.
We just had an opportunity dropped in our lap where we were able to purchase a truck, a new truck. And we got into this truck, and we've been in it ever since.
Yep. Started in this truck, and we're in this truck still.
Right. And now
we've driven for ourselves longer than we've driven for anybody else now. So.
For 5 years. And now we're looking at selling this truck. And we're in the process of selling the truck now. It's for sale. That's as far as long as we've got. It's for sale.
It's here.
And we'll be buying a new truck, hopefully. So anyway, but that, I guess,
that's what started it. And then as we were making that decision, the pros that we often thought about, even when we were driving for somebody else, is that we can make our own decisions. Not
Mm-hmm.
that any of the owners that we drove for made bad decisions. It was just the fact that we could maybe go home when we wanted to, and we're the type of drivers who cared a lot about how our owners were doing business-wise too.
Right.
And we knew if we were going home, then we were not only impacting our income, but we were also impacting the owner's income, and how that affected keeping up the trucks and the maintaining of the trucks, and And so it was a partnership, really,
Right.
you know, when
Right.
we were driving for someone else.
And that's how we looked at it. And like Judy said, when we were going home and we were not bringing income into the truck, we knew that our fleet owners were, in a sense, suffering, and we didn't like that.
No, we didn't.
So we stayed out more than what we do now. We made, a little bit. I can't say we made any more money. Maybe we're a little smarter now with the loads we take, or maybe they pay better. I don't know.
Yeah. And they gained us great experience having both
invaluable
driving for
experience.
both owners. We just had, which helped us be able to go on our own.
Right.
Well,
and I will say that we had choices with our fleet owners were very, I guess, hands off. I don't know how you go with that. They were very hands off. We've always had the ability to choose our own loads. So we could, if we wanted to go to Idaho, we were free to go to Idaho. Might not have been a very smart decision, but freight wise, Idaho is a beautiful state.
That's all we got to say about that.
Yeah. She insulted everybody in one state last night, and so I'll just anyway. So we've always had that freedom to choose our own loads, and I guess actually make as much money as you want to, stay out for as long, because when we go home we don't make money.
Both on the driver's side and the owner-operator side.
Right.
You don't make anything when you're not driving.
So, but the one thing you do remember, we own this truck, and so we get 100% of the revenue that this truck makes. We also get 100% of the bills and expenses that this truck incurs. So, it's a little bit of a drawback. In some respects,
that's a plus and a minus.
It's a plus and a minus.
That's an advantage and a disadvantage.
Yeah, we have a lot more control over our business and where we want to go as far as financial and our financial goals. I think we have more control as owners, but we do run into more responsibilities. We had the engine in this truck went out, and I've mentioned that several times. $24,000 to put a used engine in this truck, and that happened last January. So it's been a year. So that was a major expense that we were not expecting. Fortunately, we were able to get through that with unscathed, I guess. Just a $24,000 expense out of nowhere.
But that's what, bringing in all the revenue and us having all the revenue that comes to the truck is about. So you have a maintenance fund that goes totally to the business, and stays there with the business, so you can upkeep the truck that you're in. And that's what the owners, they have those maintenance funds also, to be put back, to take care of the trucks.
So are we ready to talk about numbers? Or do you have anything else?
I don't know. I was just looking at my notes here.
Yeah.
And I think mainly our decision to come out and be owner operators was the freedom,
right.
that we have, and we don't feel responsible for someone else. What we do, the mistakes we make are all about us.
Daily mistakes.
We do it all the time, and we learn from them, but we just, it was hard to make those mistakes and have someone else have to, deal with those mistakes too.
Right.
So.
Right. But, the first time you go into the garage and they give you a $2,000 repair bill, then you start to question. So it's not all fun and games. There's a lot of fun and a lot of games, but it's not all fun and games. So anyway, you ready to talk a little bit about this?
Yep, you can talk about numbers.
Okay. I've got a spreadsheet here in front of me that you guys can't see, but I can. So I'm going to read some numbers and just some ideas from this. We noticed that when we drove for a fleet owner, we drove what was under a 40-60 plan, where we got 40% of what the run mileage and the deadhead mileage paid. Just to give you an example, let's just say the load paid $1,000 to the truck. Part of that is fuel surcharge, and part of that is what we would call run pay. And there's other things that are thrown in there. There can be accessorial pay, which is like extra pay for having a lift gate, or extra pay for being hazmat, or a secure load. There's various things that our carrier pays us extra for. But for the most part, everything falls into either fuel surcharge or the run pay, and that's what I'm going to refer to it as, run pay or fuel surcharge. just know that run pay can be made up of various different things. But 95% of it is always just the actual line haul pay that we get paid on the load. So let's just say that this load pays the truck $1,000. Under the 40/60 plan, we would get 40% of basically the line haul, the run pay. So we would not get anything, no percentage of the fuel surcharge.
We don't pay for the fuel.
Yeah, we don't pay for the fuel under that plan. All of that money would go to the owner. So we call it a 40/60 plan and we get 40%, but when it comes out, we noticed over the years that we really truly did not get $400
of the total pay
for that load,
because it includes the fuel surcharge.
Exactly, it includes the fuel surcharge. So what we found out and noticed that we would normally get around 33 to 35% of what the load actually paid. So when it came time for us to get paid for the load, that $1,000 load would usually pay us around $330 to $350. It just depended a lot on the amount of deadhead, the amount of fuel we burned. Well, I guess it didn't really figure too much in there because we didn't mess
pay
with
for the fuel.
Just various different factors of how the load paid itself. So that's
and a
what
lot
we
of that
would
had to
end
do
up
with the excessive
Yeah, if there
oils.
were an extra, detention pay, then we would probably, it would tend to be a little bit more. But on average, that's what it came out to. And so, that has been 5 years ago, and I really haven't kept track of that because, like I said, under being an owner, we get 100% of everything. So what I did is I wanted to see if that figure still held, that percentage still held. So I went back and
he was doing homework all day today.
Yeah.
That's why it's a little late.
So I took all of our figures that we have done for this year. We've been out for 2 weeks, and within those 2 weeks, within those 2 weeks, our truck has grossed $13,053.19. So that's a little bit over $6,500 a week, which is
good for us.
Good for us.
It's not
We're
necessarily
happy
the
with
average
that.
we had before we went home for Christmas.
That has come out to $2.12 a mile for all miles, and that's
deadhead and everything.
Where we have been over the last few years. So what I did is I went back and looked at the percentages and everything of what we would actually, if we were driving this truck as owners or as drivers, what would we have gotten paid for those 2 weeks? And I put in our numbers, I put it in a spreadsheet, calculated everything out, and surprisingly not, the percentage came out to 35, just a little over 35%, which is where it had been 5 years ago. So those numbers don't change. We would have been paid as drivers $4,654.01. 1 penny. For those 2 weeks of work, and that's $1,325 essentially a week that we would have got as a paycheck. Now remember, we would have been independent contractors, just like we are independent contractors at FedEx. So there are no taxes taken out of that check. That's what the check would have been, $46.54.01.
So if you think back to your regular whatever at-home jobs where you were getting taxes taken out and stuff, this does not have any of that taken out.
Nope.
This is just flat out what you would make.
Flat out gross pay. At the end of the year, don't forget, you'll have to pay taxes on that.
The tax man wants his money.
Depending on how you've got yourself set up as a business or just how you've got that worked, you remember you have to pay self-employment tax, and you may be paying the 15% on that. You pay your portion, and you actually pay the business portions in some cases. It just depends. We're not telling you anything tax purposes. We're not tax professionals.
No, we are not. No, we're far from it. But there's also the estimated taxes and those kind of things that people do differently, so they're not paying everything in one lump sum.
We don't really know how your tax rates, if you have more income, maybe you're in a higher tax bracket. I don't know. We're just going to give you the gross figures of what you would actually get.
And every state's different too.
And every state,
what they want.
Yeah, state taxes. So we're just going to give you the gross figures. Your tax situation will be different than ours. So anyway, so that works out to 35.65% of what you would actually be taking in, with the fuel surcharge. We looked at the two other scenarios where it's a 60-40 split. and a true 60-40 split where the driver pays for the fuel and pays for the death, pays for the tolls, and it's just split 60-40, a true 60-40.
Everything. The total amount coming to the truck is split 60-40.
Right, fuel surcharge and everything. In that case, you would have taken 60% of the load, so that $1,000, your portion of that would have been $600 on that particular load. If you take that percentage over, the 60%, over to what our income would have been for those 2 weeks, like in our previous example, you would have taken in $7,831.91, which would have been a lot better. But same amount of time, we also had to buy fuel, and we spent during those 2 weeks $2,130.87 in fuel. So once you factor out your fuel costs for that, you would have been left with $5,701.04. So
now I'm going to interject right here.
Yeah.
So our fuel cost, we right now sitting with our truck have not delivered this load, but we have a full tank of fuel in our truck.
Right.
So those 2 weeks we have a full. So
the fuel would be maybe slightly less. If we had bought fuel yesterday when we got up here, it would have been a little bit less. I have noticed over the years our fuel cost stays within 15 to 16% of the revenue to this truck, and it varies a little bit based on
winter
the
and
price of
summer.
fuel, the fuel mileage we're getting. As a rough ballpark, like in this case, it was 16.32, but that figures in our fuel costs. We bought diesel exhaust fluid twice, and we bought fuel 10 times, so we had 45 cents a time for our transactions cost for our fuel card, so that's $4.50 right there. 16.32% of our revenue to the truck went out the door for fuel. That's a good ballpark, 15 to 16%. The other type of pay plan that we are sort of familiar with is a 60-40 plan, but whoever gets the 60% gets the entire fuel cost, or the fuel surcharge. This would tend to put a little bit more money in your pocket. That percentage would go up to 62.13% of what the load paid. So on that $1,000 load, you would get paid $621.30, and extrapolate it out for those 2 weeks, you would have gotten paid $5,978.61. So a little bit more.
Now, just to reiterate, this 60-40 plan is that the entire fuel surcharge goes to the person who is receiving the 60%.
Right, under this scenario. Yes.
Under this scenario. The previous scenario was the fuel surcharge
60-40.
60-40.
Right.
So the owner got, the 40% of the fuel surcharge. In this last scenario, the owner does not take any of the fuel surcharge. They give it to the driver.
But now,
who's paying for the fuel?
The one thing that you have to remember, there is a significant difference there. If you extrapolate that out over the course of a year, and I took those percentages, the 35.65% and the 60% and the 62%. I looked at what is, for whatever reason, is the number we're stuck at, $275,000 a year. That has been our gross revenue, pretty close to within a couple $1,000s over the last 5 to 6 years. Last year was a little different, but but that's a good point for us, $275,000. So if you take those numbers out, someone that's driving on the 40-60 plan would be expected to take home on $275,000, $98,049.08.
Again, this is gross.
This is gross.
Before taxes.
That would be what your truck fleet owner would pay you throughout the course of the year, $98,049. If you were on the true 60-40 plan, you would be expected that your fleet owner would pay you $165,000.
What? That came out even. Wow.
Came out even. But don't forget, you have to buy a year's worth of fuel. So, the last time we did this, $275,000, we bought $40,000 worth of fuel and DEF throughout the year. So if you take that $40,000 away right off the top that you're going to pay for fuel costs, that 165 now turns into 125.
Yeah. So these numbers don't include any expenses for fuel.
No.
This is just what gross is.
Right. Like I said, the 98,000, you would not have any expenses for fuel.
You don't pay for fuel.
But under the both editions of the 60/40 plan, you would pay for the fuel. And so, you would figure at least $40,000 for fuel. So on the 60/40 plan with the 60% getting the full fuel surcharge, that number for gross would go up to about 170,000. But again, you'd have 40,000 off of that just to pay for fuel. So that would put you at maybe 131,000. So let's just say. So this to give you an idea, that's where those differences come in. Now, we talked to our fleet owner when we first started, and we were actually trying to find an owner that did the 60/40, because obviously if you look at those numbers, it looks like you take in a little bit more money. And they actually, when they started in the business, paid it that way. That's how they had their pay plan with their drivers. And what he found out was it's sort of a little bit of a trade-off. The driver makes more money, the fleet owner makes less money. And a lot of times what they were finding is it becomes harder for that fleet owner to maintain the trucks, because
especially if they're older trucks.
Especially older trucks, but the fleet owner has less money to do that with. And so there may be a trade-off with maybe that, and I'm not, please don't take this as I'm saying this happens across the board. It doesn't, but it's just a scenario where the fleet owner may not maintain the trucks as well as they would if they were paying the driver a 40/60 split. The funds are just not there. Guaranteed, a driver will make more money in his pocket on a 60/40 split. But if the trucks are not maintained as well,
then you have more time off.
You may have more time in the shop, and that.
And we're just sharing this information so you can make informed decisions by asking those fleet owners those questions. And they may maintain their trucks because they have funds that are coming from other places, or a brand new truck versus something that's not so new, so they may have that balanced out. And there are really good business people out here who do a great job with the 60/40.
Well, and some fleet owners, you sort of gain an advantage in some ways by having more than one truck. If one truck is down, then that cost of maintaining that truck is essentially split between 5 trucks or 10 trucks or 50 trucks, as opposed to just the one truck. Now, on the other side of that, our side at the moment, the owner-operator side, our gross revenue for the year would be $275,000, which is a good chunk of change. But we also have all the expenses that have to come out of that.
All the maintenance, all the oil changes, all the, downtime. Well, drivers have downtime too. But.
Just to give you an idea, we went back and looked at 2017. And that was the last full year we ran the 2017 taxes. Well, so maybe I'm a couple years back. Anyway, to give you an idea, 2017, we grossed right at $275,000 for the year. To give you an idea of our expenses, these are ballpark expenses. We spent $40,000 on fuel and DEF for the year. We spent $2,132 on the fees that we pay for the Qualcomm and for the Ameriscan units that are in our truck, because we're a refrigerated truck. One of them is $16 a week, the other one's $25 a week, so that comes up to $2,132. We spent $13,000 on repairs, and that includes preventive maintenance.
Now, this was after our truck was up, not any longer on any warranties.
Right. Yeah,
right.
We were out of warranty at this point. We had
on
just
anything. So
parted year
belts,
we were out of warranty.
Whatever that needed.
So we spent $13,000 on repairs.
And
now,
that's a pretty good average, just regular maintenance. That was a regular maintenance year for us.
It might be a little high because I did have to replace tires that year. I spent about $2,000 on tires.
Oh, that's regular maintenance.
Regular maintenance. We put steer tires on.
Yeah.
So that was a little high, I guess. But $13,000. That's all your PMs, oil changes, anything that we had repaired. I don't remember what it would have been, but we spent $13,000. You know,
Steer tires are a good chunk.
we also had to pay fuel and mileage taxes, and that came out to about $1,300, and that comes out of our settlement. FedEx.
That, by the way, is just fuel and mileage taxes. That is not just
that is
taxes.
a factor of how much you run and in which states you run in.
Yeah.
We also paid $1,300 a year for the license plate. We go through FedEx to get our license. We're licensed in the state of Ohio. They charge us $25 a week, so that's $1,300 a year. We paid about $3,800 for our insurance, and that's a couple of different insurance. There's
bobtail and then just
regular truck insurance. Now remember, this is at this point in time on a 3-year-old truck, so we had reduced the value down of our truck from the initial value of $234 or $236. We were paying, I think, it on about $178,000 on the value.
That is something
of the
I
truck.
never knew. That was something I learned as an owner. I didn't realize your insurance rates would go down the older your truck is.
Well,
because it's based on how much your truck's worth.
Right.
Not how much.
Exactly. So as the older the truck gets, your insurance costs go down.
Because it's not going to cost as much.
The first year we got this truck, it was like $6,800. So they go down. We spent about $3,000 in tolls, and that is the majority of that went to Pennsylvania.
The majority of it always goes to Pennsylvania.
And the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And then we spent about an additional $5,000 on what we call miscellaneous cost, our cost for our phones. We have a business phone. We have business internet because that's,
it goes all the
business. Other things, little small things we bought for the truck that wasn't a repair cost. Maybe probably we bought those yellow bars in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
Small items like that, but
it
totals up over the year's time. So we spent about $5,000, and that's normally what we budget. So the total that we spent that year. Oh, then I forgot the big cost. Yes, the big cost. We have to make a truck payment each month. $54,000 for the
ballpark.
year. Ballpark.
That's an average, or that's
for our little truck payment, and so the total of that. Now these are expenses. The total that we spent just on the truck. Now there were other expenses we had that were business expenses that we paid to an accountant. There's a couple other things that we had that were outside of this. This is just related to the truck.
This is just for the truck. This isn't business.
Came up to about $123,000. So if you take that $123,000 away from the $275,000 that we grossed, that left us with about $152,000. And now that's after we paid for all of our truck expenses. So as you can see, as the owners, we got more money than what the drivers would have after they paid for fuel. So that's sort of our advantage, and that's what we've sort of
And the other advantage is we have more things we can deduct for our tax purposes on the end. And again, we're not tax professionals, so but that's, when you just drive for someone, you don't pay any fuel, you don't do anything. There are very limited deductions, whereas the deductions on our repairs and everything like that we can use.
All of those expenses I just listed are all deductible, so we don't pay taxes on that portion. We also get deductions for depreciation, which is not included in there, which would have been well over $25,000 for that year, probably closer to 40. So that was $40,000 we didn't pay taxes on. We also get our per diem, which the drivers also get. That's really about the only expense you can take off as a driver. Per diem, maybe a few.
It's still like $50-some a day.
I'm not for sure what it is. The government basically
allows for it.
Allows you to. They give you this number that every day that you're away from home, and you have to be away from home to take the per diem, is you can deduct what they would consider a normal amount, whether that would be for meals. In a business, you can take off your meals. Well, per diem is sort of like a
you're away from home. You can't. You're not cooking
flat
at home.
Rate.
Yeah, it is. It's a flat rate.
So, but we have that too, so we can take that off. So anyway, that's just the difference. After our expenses that year, we would have, pre-tax, come up with around $152,000, as opposed to $98,000 as a driver under the 40/60 maybe 125, 130 as a driver on the 60/40. One other thing I should mention about a per diem is that's figured on a day basis. And for us this particular year, we were away from home 316 days. So you've got, what is that, 40 some days? We figured it out that we normally typically stay out and run for a good 45 weeks. And we're home various, you add in the weekends, you add in times that we're actually home.
Yeah, over Christmas we're home more
over
often.
Christmas.
Or more longer, I should say.
Right. So 275 per year is probably, I don't know, probably on the low side because we don't stay out and run that super hard. We know people that have grossed well over 300,000.
Yeah.
That's not really uncommon, but they don't go home much. Or they're magic and they're able to get them to pay them more money. I haven't figured that out yet.
They have little fairies working for them somewhere.
Somewhere. The load fairies. Yes, the load fairies.
Or the leprechauns who, have the the gold somewhere.
Anyway, as this was supposed to be a serious discussion.
Sorry.
So that's just to give you a little idea of the differences between, what you would take as a driver, driving for someone, and maybe as an owner-operator. Now, I will say that when we had our engine blow up in our truck, we went home for that weekend. We were 4 hours from the house. When we came back Monday morning, they handed us an estimate to put a new engine in this truck. A new engine that would have had a 200,000 mile warranty on it. And there was a $12,000 core charge that was included in the price, so we would have got $12,000 of that back. But that price that they gave us was $63,000. So the engine was around 51, I think, installed and everything. Brand new engine in the truck with only a 200,000 mile warranty, 2-year warranty maybe. So yeah, we about fainted. So that we opted,
big trucks, big numbers.
we put an engine in this truck that was a used engine that only had 83,000 miles on the engine itself. It ran fine, knock on wood, and now we have about 223,000 miles on that engine. So we should be good for years. We do not have a warranty on the engine, unfortunately, but that's just something you have to take into account because you don't want to spend all of this money you take in.
Yes, because it looks really good when you first start out, and you're like, oh, yes, look at all this money we're bringing in. It looks so good.
And we do. We bring in a lot of money, but there's a lot of money that goes out the door, too. We've got almost a $4,500 a month truck payment that has to go out. Not to mention all the rest of the stuff that we have to pay on. So, yeah, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the differences. We are happy, even with the added risk of driving the truck. I think we come out ahead over time. It's shown that out. The first year we drove this truck, we paid for, some things out of our pocket that I do not think we would ever have been able to afford if we were still driving for a fleet owner. So yeah, it's a little bit of a trade-off, but it's one I think we've been happy with. I think we're good with doing what we're doing. Obviously, we're trying to buy a new truck. We'll see how that goes. The new truck will probably cost us anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 more a month, just in truck payment and additional insurance costs.
Yeah.
Because the value of the truck is going to be a lot more than this one. But hopefully, the truck will be set up so that we will be able to make that much more money because of the increased amount of loads we'll be able to haul. This truck.
And our increased payments have to do with the time frame for our loan this time too. We
Right.
changed that up a little bit.
This truck we financed for 6 years. The new truck will be financed for 5 years, so we're paying a little bit more, but overall we'll be paying less in interest.
Yes. And when it comes down to this, everybody's different. So, there are people out there who buy used trucks. There are people about buy new trucks, people who drive. It's all up to you and what you want for your business and what you want personally, and that's totally up to you, because there are people out there who do not ever want to own a truck because they don't want the headaches of trying to figure that out of what to do when major things happen.
Right.
And and it's something we talked about. When you're a driver, you can just if you decide you don't want to drive, you can just go home and not drive and find
Right.
something else. When you own a truck, there's that whole, we've got to figure out, what are we going to do with the truck? Are we going to be able to get it sold by the time we want to be able to get, those type of things. But we're happy with the trade-off.
I think so. Yeah.
We think
We'll give it a big thumbs up
we think this works for us,
for the time being.
for right now.
But for like I said, I just wanted to give you an idea about some of our numbers. You can, of course, if you ran more and made more coming in, then it would probably be better off. But the one thing is, you have to pay more in taxes.
Yeah.
So whatever it is.
And please feel free to share in the comments, any questions you have for us, but just knowledge for other people too.
Right.
But we haven't done it all. We haven't been everywhere, done everything.
These are totally our experiences that we're willing to share with you guys, and so if you want to see more videos like this, please like and comment and share and do all that fun
subscribe
stuff.
and hit that notification bell.
Oh yes, don't forget about the bell, and we will see you
in the next business video.
Yeah.
So long, everybody.
Good night.